Okay, so thank you everyone for joining my session today. It's KB Update, Scan and Patch Offline Servers without WSUS. I'm super excited about this session. I'm also the creator of dbatools, and that's one of the modules that I have that has, like, we always watch the downloads. And I didn't watch the downloads for KB Update because I was like, oh, it's not dbatools. And then it turns out that it has like 600,000 plus installs from the PowerShell gallery. So I started giving it a lot of loving, and from that came this session. So I'm particularly excited about it. All right, so my name is Chrissy LeMaire. I'm a dual Microsoft MVP and a GitHub star. And I'm also, my primary job is as an automation engineer. I have a focus on security. So whenever, we have to automate the installation of patches or automate the checks to ensure that there's compliance, that's what I do all day, every day. And that's actually how this project came up. And I'm so excited. Finally, after a whole bunch of years, Learn dbatools and a month of lunches came out. If you would like, you can go to dbatools.io/book. That redirects you to Manning, and you can use the code BLDBATools50 for 50% off. And I am on Twitter. You can find me there at CL. If you have any questions about KB Update, dbatools, whatever, you can message me there or, tweet at me. So this session is about KB Update, which is essentially a command line interface for this website that was, I think, clearly made in the 90s. It's looked like this for as long as I can remember. And it's actually, even though it doesn't seem to have been given a lot of love by Microsoft, it's very much an essential website. If there is an install that your Windows machine, you need to install it, but it's not showing up on your needed list, then you go here, you type in the KB number, and you're presented with a download dialog box. And man, a few years ago, I was given a list from IA, or Information Assurance, the InfoSec people, and they're like, hey, you need to install these patches because WSUS, for some reason, didn't push it out to your 10 servers. There were 10 patches times 10 servers. I had to download this 10 times, but it's actually more than 10 times because there's like a whole bunch of files that are associated with each of the KBs. So that was like exhausting. And I was like, there's no way, somebody has to have built this. And then I looked around and nobody had really built a comprehensive solution for it. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. There isn't an API for this, which is probably why people haven't built anything for it. But in the end, I did some screen scraping like it was back in the 90s, and I got this really, really cool module that I'm very excited to share. So let's talk about Microsoft patch sources. There are third-party solutions like Altiris, maybe, I don't know, they were back in the 90s. We're not going to be covering any of those. It's solely the Microsoft stuff because I always like staying native. So these are the places that from Microsoft you can get your KB updates. The first one is the Microsoft Update Catalog, which we just saw. And then also Microsoft Windows Update, which I believe actually uses the Microsoft Update Catalog for all of its patching needs, because whenever I ran Wireshark to see where Windows Update was going, it was hitting that catalog. There's also, I learned about this just today, Windows Update for Business. I don't know anything about it because I was told about it like about 30 minutes ago, but I wanted to add it to the list and actually research it. We're going to have some time to talk during the demo, so if anybody knows about this and wants to share with the class, I would love that. The other one is Windows Server Update Services. And whenever I remember the first time I was like, oh my God, I could be like my own Windows Update catalog. I was so excited and I installed it. And then I clicked every single thing and it downloaded. It was going to download terabytes. And then I was like, oh, I should actually just, download the very specific things that I needed. But then whenever I went and I used it in the real world, what I found was that there's literally no administrator in the world, not a SQL Server administrator, not a Windows Server Update Services administrator, not an SCCM administrator that can make this system awesome and stable and online and like not having to rebuild the catalogs all the time. So I'm not a huge fan of WSUS. There is also Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager, or SCCM. When you use this solution, you pretty much have to have an SCCM expert on staff. It's massive. And usually it's enterprises that are going to have SCCM within the organization. It's smaller businesses for the rest of the patch sources. And this actually, I heard, was built on top of WSUS and like does a better job, but it's, it's better. But I don't mess with it because it's too much, especially for offline patching. For offline patching, you can't use the Windows Update catalog or Microsoft Windows Update that's attached to that catalog, the online one. I don't know about Windows Update for businesses. With WSUS, you totally can, right? And then you can like burn all of the updates for WSUS and then put it in the central server. But what if you just have a network with like 3 servers? Then are you going to add a whole nother one? And you're certainly not going to do SCCM. So it needed to be a solution. Now, Windows updating does have some associated PowerShell modules. There's Update Services, which helps you manage WSUS. It does things like approve patches or, tell it to download, make categories probably. Then there's PS Windows Update, and this actually manages the Windows Update client. I think sometimes it's also called WUA. It does installs and uninstalls, and it's interesting whenever you do remote install. So local, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. You can access it with an API. You can like use the exe. But whenever you do it remotely, it introduces a bunch of Kerberos problems. And I heard or read that there's an actual limitation. I don't think that Microsoft intended it to be so hard, but it's super hard. However, you can get around it by either installing a service or by using scheduled tasks. You can also use psexec. Whatever will get you running as the system user can help you install Windows updates. I didn't like any of those options. kbupdate, so it doesn't manage your Windows client. If you want to, you could use it in conjunction with PS Windows Update, but kbupdate will surface that Microsoft Update catalog. It does do installs and uninstalls, and it actually uses invoke DSC resource, which was a command that was introduced in 2015. Whenever I was looking for a solution, I didn't want to do psexec. It felt too kludgy. Matt Hitchcock actually messaged me and was like, hey, you should look into invoke DSC resource. And I was like, yeah, but like I'm not super into DSC. I don't know about those push and pull servers. That sounds like additional infrastructure. And he's like, no, it's just a command and you could use it in isolation. So I reached out to Jess Pomfret, who is the SQL Server community's like DSC person, and she helped create, install kbupdate, and from there I've added a lot of features. So this is what the update catalog looks like, right? Whenever you go there, you type in Windows 11 into this like 90s glowing, I forgot what this is like some sort of Photoshop effect, the glowing search bar, you get your results, and there's a lot of clicking, right? If you want your details, then you'll click on this left hyperlink and you'll get this update details, and then you have to click language selection and package details and all of this. And then if you want the download, it's not just a straight up download. You actually do have to click on an additional link for the cab. So what I did was I took that and I wrote a whole bunch of PowerShell to scrape it, and I created a SQLite database, and this is what it looks like in PowerShell, right? Like the first one is, if you use -simple, it just does 2 clicks, right? So first it finds it, and then it goes and it clicks just one thing. But if you want the details, that's going to be 3 clicks. You aren't making these clicks, but PowerShell is, if you're using the web as a source. So it's pretty time consuming because of all of those clicks, which is why I introduced -simple so that you could keep the time petite. And kbupdate uses 3 internal sources. The first one, as I had mentioned, was a custom SQLite database that's included in the module, and it's updated monthly, which I love because I actually used to have this VM in Azure, and it had a scheduled task that would, like, the VM actually had WSUS, which it would like grab this thing and then I'd go get a couple things. And then I got a billing alert one time that was like, hey, you're running out of you're running out of money. And I was like, oh God. And I went and I just deleted everything, including that VM. So I lost it. So for like, I don't know, 2 years, this database wasn't getting updated. And I felt like I, just disappointed myself. And then I decided this would be a perfect thing to have the GitHub actions do. And so now I have a GitHub action that checks the date of my catalog and the date of Microsoft's catalog. And if it's the same, then it just goes back to sleep. And then the next day, if it is different, then it'll go and rebuild all of this. And so you'll recognize as you look at this SQLite table, that, it's a lot of the things that are actually in the catalog, like the architecture and the description and the classification and the MSRC number, etc. So again, it's really awesome that this is actually updated every single month. So you should update kbupdate at least once a month. And whenever you use the database, it's super fast. The other source is catalog scraping, and again, no API, so it's pretty slow. So what it'll do first is it will grab information from SQLite, and then it'll go and just check to make sure that there's no additional information on the web. If there is, then it'll go through and do all of that parsing. And I was really excited about this. I was able to add WSUS as a source. So if you do have WSUS within your organization, you could still use kbupdate to manage everything. All right, usually I don't do this, but I wanted to do a quick command overview. So get kbupdate will go and you have pattern matching. It'll first just put the phrase that you're using into the search bar, and it'll get a bunch of things. You can filter it by architecture and operating system to some degree. It's really hard because Microsoft does not have a standard for the way that they use the operating system, right? So it's not just like Windows 10. It's Windows 10, like 221 H32, and so that one isn't as accurate, but the architecture is, which is nice. Save kbupdate, all you got to do is pipe get kbupdate to save, and it'll save that without all those 3,000 clicks. Install kbupdate is super exciting. You can use it to work with get and save. If you're doing it locally, it does use Windows Update, because I figured that it's probably just better to use Windows Update if it can. If not, then it uses invoke DSC resource, and it uses jobs for all of this. So if you are patching, or if you're patching like 10 servers, it's not going to sit around waiting for the first server, waiting for the second server. It'll actually create a whole bunch of jobs and do them all at the same time. Get KB installed software. I'm particularly proud of this one because if you ever use KB hotfix, there's so much that's missing from it. It's super incomplete, and all of the sources that I found were incomplete. But with Get KB installed software, it's like 5 different sources, so it's as thorough as can possibly be. Uninstall KB updates. is it uninstalls. I actually, in order to prepare for for this presentation, I installed literally everything on what turned out to be a SQL Server cluster node in my lab. But I was really excited and shocked whenever I restored the snapshot, and then it just quarantined it and I rejoined it. It was no big deal. Get KB needed update. Whenever you have your Windows Update client and you go and it's, you say like, are there any updates available? This command does that for you using the Windows client. Save KB scan file. So we were talking earlier about those sources, right? Now that I think about it, I actually sort of need to put that as a source. So you can use WSUS. You can use the Windows Update. You could use the catalog, but you can also use this little cab. Well, it's not a little cab. It's about a gig, which is why I didn't include it in KB Update. But you could use this cab from Microsoft. That's the database that's released each month, and you could use that as a source. So when you have an offline server that can't reach out to Microsoft, you just have this little cab and you compare it against that cab, which you should get at least once a month. Then also connect and disconnect KB WSUS server. Whenever you use this, it'll actually set your connection string in general to use this. So by default, it uses web and it uses database. But whenever you connect to your WSUS server, it'll change your default connection source. All right, so let's talk about my PowerPoint put all three. Oh wait, no, never mind. I wanted to do this. So let's talk about the offline updating challenges. The first is that it's offline and it just can't access Windows Update. And then before, as I talked about, small systems don't often have WSUS or SCCM. It's just too big of a burden. So if you don't have either of these, what you end up doing, because it's just so much easier to manually patch, right? If you have 5 servers, you're like, whatever, I'm just going to go and get the patches that I need and just install it, this month. But, whenever you have an organization that's suddenly doing continuous scanning of all of these systems, then it gets more burdensome because you have to do this more often. So let's talk about offline updating how-to. There are 4 or 5 steps that you have to follow in order to successfully update your offline servers. The first is that you need to download the needed patches from the Microsoft Update Catalog for the last 30 days. Yesterday, I actually tried this, and if you do it for 30 days, it's about... how much was it? It wasn't a terabyte. It was like, I don't know, maybe 100 gigs. The reason I didn't put a lot of effort into this is because my organization has a different source that we download from, and it's called DISA, and I actually created a PowerShell module. If you work with DISA, I created a PowerShell module called DISA Repo Tools that will download all of those for you, and those are the ones that are approved. So I don't have to do this part in my day-to-day job, but I did enable it for others for this session so that I could be like, Pasow. All right, so then once you get your patches, you have to download that WUA database, which enables computers to check for the needed updates. So instead of saying, hey, go out to Microsoft, you say, hey, use this database and check against that. Next, you have to take both the WUA database and those patches in KB Update, like just do a save module KB Update. You take all of that, you burn it to DVD or USB. I can't use USB. So thankfully, all of the patches actually fit on a DVD. So you take that, you burn it, and then you move it to the other system. Once you have your patches, your WUA database, and your KB Update, then you check each of your servers for the needed updates against the WUA database, and then you install those updates from a centralized repository of patches. Woo! All right, so now we're going to do a demo. Initially, I was like, any questions so far? But then I realized this is a very unique demo in that it takes a long time to show you one command. It's not like the dbatools where I could just be like, new database. And it's like, this one actually, I'm going to be performing the install so that you believe me. And therefore, we're going to have plenty of time for questions as I wait like 1 minute for the install. So let's go ahead and do this demo. All right, let's see, what's the last thing that I ran? All right, cool. I was just, cleaning up, checking. All right, so we have, I'm running as administrator. Generally, I don't, but whenever you work with updates on your local system, you do have to run as administrator. If you're solely patching remote systems, you don't even have to worry about running as admin. All right, so let's see what we're going to do here. I'll be honest, like in real life, I just take this and copy it and paste it over and over, and that's the way that it's most comfortable. So we have 25 minutes left. Let me go ahead and I'm going to use this. I'm just going to use my my Windows terminal. If it's too annoying, y'all let me know. So the first thing I had talked about before, right? Actually, it's mostly, I don't like the progress bar. No, okay, let's keep it here. All right, so I talked about before about how, we have these patterns right here. The pattern is, it's a regular expression match, so that's how we'll be doing it. And we're gonna go ahead and check for this. Oops, no, I'm copying it over here. So it'll actually, so it searched locally, it found a couple things, so you can see it's just 2 seconds. That was pretty fast. It did a tentative check online, but it found that it could just return everything. So here are the results for those 2 KBs. Looks pretty good. I wonder how many there actually are. Let's try measure object. All right, so 6 came back. So it's probably like various things, like x64, x86, etc. Oops, close that. All right, next up. Now, whenever you have all of those patches that you get back, I didn't know this, but whenever you have like a KB, if it's reissued, I guess, there'll be multiple matches in the database. So you want to throw a latest on there, which executes this command called select KB latest or something. And it'll return a fewer number. As you saw, if we go to measure, oh, I like measure benchmark, but right now I want measure object. So you can see that there's just 2 that returned, right? Which makes sense because we're just looking for 2 results because we looked for 2 patterns. All right, this I love. This saved so much time. So we got those 2 results, and now we can just save that KB update and like sit back. Oh, I already did it. So I could do like out, no, not out variable. What's the one? Is it clobber? Guess not. Let's see. Operating system product language, allow clobber. So let's see how big those are. You know what? That's not even bad. Let's watch it happen. I like all of these. It's pretty decent. These, sometimes it's accurate. Oh no, why did it do it twice? I don't know. I'm going to have to fix that. Man, let's just pretend that didn't happen. And I do, if anybody could file, if they could file an issue saying that showed duplicates. I was actually working on it earlier and I discarded. I undid a patch and I wonder, see, repo dupe copy, and I think that I need to at least put it partially back. All right. The next thing that we want to do, we had talked about limiting the results. So we could do architecture as x64. So by default, if this is going to return x64 and x86, but if we say that the architecture, you just want 1, then it'll return that. So let's do it without architecture and count that. So we can see that there's 3 results. Now, whenever we throw in architecture, this is so that you will believe me, we can see that there's 2. So it removed x86. And I wanted to talk about specifying the computer name, initially what I did was whenever you specified the computer name, it would go and it would get the architecture and it would get the operating system. But the data just isn't good enough to be able to use that operating system. So now it's essentially just figuring out the architecture, which will pretty much be x64 anyway. So you could see this. Whenever you do simple, y'all saw how fast that was. Like, I think without a format list, it'll be even faster. You can see, yeah, 657, that's fine. So that's just really quick. It went and just grabbed the absolutely necessary info. Next up, all right. So if you want to use your current Windows update source, like by default, out the box, we're going to use Microsoft. So let's go ahead and run get kb needed update. And this takes time. It takes time the same way that whenever you are, whenever you go and you click the button, well, y'all can't see me pointing because I'm a pickle, but I'm pointing at the lower right-hand side. Whenever you do that, you know, it sits there and it's like, oh, let me find all your stuff. So this takes 14 seconds, which is about the same. So you can see this found all of the needed updates straight from Microsoft. Next up, all in one. This is time consuming. Skip. All right, Chrissy. You know what? Instead of skipping, what I did was I just made it like a little bit more pointed, accurate. No, just it takes less time now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this needed update on both SQL CS and localhost, and I love out variable. I use it all the time. I'm going to assign it to a variable called needed patches. So now it's getting those needed updates. We're enjoying this progress bar. I think that this takes up to 50 seconds. Nope, 15. Oh, right. So we can see these needed updates. And now whenever we do needed patches, then we could see. So I restored a snapshot so that I knew exactly which patches are available. Boom. So you see that one? This one is pretty fast to install. So let's save it. I'm going to save it to a repository, a remote repository. Ooh, that introduces Kerberos problems usually, right? But I found a way around it by being super manual. And whenever you pipe these needed patches to install kb update and you specify the repository path, see how it's all coming together? This will allow you to install those updates from the repository path. So this centralized place. Now what I do to get around the Kerberos double hop, triple hop issues is that I will copy it from this machine which has access to that repository. There we go. So you see I'm copying it to, so I copied it first to my machine and then I copied it out. So I do this using copy item to session, which is the awesomest. Now it's actually installing. So if we have any questions, I believe that this will take about 30 seconds and then it should be successful. Oh my God, you poor things. Y'all would have to like run up to the Q&A. No questions, all right. So we're going to sit back while this, y'all might be interested. While this happens, we're going to open the database. Let's see GitHub kb update. So it is divided into two modules because I make more changes to the kb update library, and this SQLite file is 168 megs. I don't want you to download that every time that I make a change to kb update. So what you do is I just update the required modules and it'll go and grab it. That was something that Kevin Marquette suggested that I do, and I love it. So it does have a little library, and the library gets updated at least once a month, as we had talked about before. All right, so that installed. Let's see the results. Look, that's really beautiful, right? That's super nice. It found the needed patches, and then It installed it from a repository. It requires a restart. Sweet, that's some good info. All right, next, remember we had talked about that scan file that you're going to need? Ooh, I already downloaded it, and I noticed, I wonder if I could do an, nope, allow clobber. Yeah, I know that this is the most recent, and I did want to save time for this demo, so I am not going to, but there's this WSUS scan2.cab. This one is, it's this giant XML file, and I did use it to populate the SQLite database, but it's just so massive. You can see here, unpacked, it's like more than, like it's like 600 megs. It's so massive that I just took what I needed from it for mine, and then yeah, you could just go and grab this as you need. I'm not gonna go and allow clobber. Let's just pretend that I downloaded it just now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the needed updates from SQL CS using that scan file. Now if I do a force, then, so first it'll check on that remote server to see if the scan file exists. And if it doesn't and you didn't specify force, it'll be like, I could copy it over. And the reason that I wanted to do force was because it is like a gig. And that's a long time. Like, look, we just have to like sit back. And by default, I do put in app data local temp. That way it disappears whenever you reboot your server, just because it is such a big file. That I didn't want to take up all your disk space. I think in the future I'm just going to skip the force. May the force. What I can do while that is copying over, so that was save scan file. That's one of the 4 things that you're going to have to do to put on your offline network. So we're going to go and get the KB installed software from like more than one server. And it's super complete. I'm really excited. And I do for the, please enjoy the progress bar. This one, what I did was I set it for 1 to 100, like just loop it and put a dot, because I kept wondering, and actually somebody filed a ticket and they're like, it's breaking and it's just not doing anything for a while. And then they came back and said, oh, oops, it was actually doing something I just didn't know. So I put in this progress bar that just shows that PowerShell hasn't frozen or anything like that. So we're going to enjoy the progress bar. Perfect. And we have about 10 minutes. So now that it's copied that scan file over with the force, it is going to compare that scan file. Sorry, it's going to use the scan file to determine the needed updates, therefore removing the internet as a requirement for checking for needed updates. And what you can do to get everything into your DVD, you could keep like a mirror server on your internet connected side. You know, so if you install 10 patches on your disconnected network, you install those same 10 patches, and then you could just use the needed updates and copy that way. Or as we'll see later, you could just download everything that has changed in the past 30 days. All right, so that looks super good. I like it. I like it. This is very exciting, I think. I like it. All right, so I already did that. Oh, that's what happened. Okay. Did I show this? Did I do it 2 times? I did. Okay, cool. I'll just remove this. Okay, now we're going to use this, the get KB installed software, and this, I mean, it's amazing. I'm doing it using jobs, so it's just, you know, go and dispatch itself and then coming back. But I do love just how absolutely thorough it is. And a lot of times if you're looking through this, it'll look like it's duplicates, but it's not. So let's make this larger. So this is SQL CS. If you are like a patch manager, this might look familiar to you. You know, if you mess with the SCCM, it doesn't really. I don't mess with packages often other than whenever I deal with this. So this is pretty much what it looks like. And what can you do with this? Like, look, this looks similar, right? So it has the same KB, but then it's different versions. So it is not a duplicate. This looks familiar. I mean, I guess I could group just the Defender antivirus stuff, but what I do is I just exclude it because it's not that important to me. All right, so if we look over here, that was SQL CS, but then, oh, SQL 01 as well. So that's really nice. All right, so let's see an actual install, right? There's a bunch of different ways to install kbupdate on your systems, and one way is just straightforward with the path. I'm going to install this locally on my workstation, conveniently named workstation. So there's a splat, love some splats, it's really pretty. And now we sit back, we be a pickle, and we watch invoke a DSC command do its thing. Really excited. I'm using newer versions. I got this working maybe in the past week or so. Jess Pomfret was having issues with localization. So because hers was ENGB, it would just like the older versions would die out. And then I talked to Big Effin' Mikey, and I was like, hey, what do I do about this? And he told me to use the XPS desired state configuration. So you might be wondering, Chrissy, well, did you like just prep your systems for this demo? Like, why does XPS desired state configuration exist on that remote system? And the answer is that I check, and if it's not in program files so that everything can access it, like system and, you know, trusted installer or whatever, I check to see if it's there. And if it's not, then it will copy over all of the modules that it needs. So we're enjoying the progress bar. This here is the SQL Server. It's like CU19. And I believe that it takes just 50 seconds. The progress bar. Maybe if anybody knows actually how to get the information from DSC, it's very possible. I just didn't have time to extract it. We are a pickle. There we go. Look at that. It's what I have loved about Invoke DSC resource is that it's just like it works. It works so consistently. And whenever it doesn't, I mean, it'll return something like, but it's not the actual command, right? It's the installer itself that's problematic. So I just really do love how reliable this module has been during all of my testing. All right, so now we're going to check our work. We're going to go back and use get kb installed software, and we're going to specify that pattern, the kb, and there it is. All right, now guess what we're going to do? We checked our work. Now we are going to uninstall it. There's a bunch of different ways that you can uninstall your KBs. In this case, I'll just say, ooh, I need to uninstall KB like 50 whatever. And you can see here, it'll tell you by default, this is what we're executing. So you can see if you're a SQL Server DBA, this should be familiar to you, right? So we're going to remove patch all instances, be quiet, and then we will say yes. You sit back and you enjoy the progress bar. Now in real life, I don't think that you'll be sitting around enjoying the progress bar. What you're going to do is just execute this against like 20 servers and then go and, you know, go to the grocery store, pick up some food, and maybe make some dinner and come back and everything will be done. That's what I used to do with my migrations. I loved it. Oh, it was glorious. Migrate an entire SQL Server instance. I would just leave. I'd come back. So this should take about another, oh, I'm glad that you love it. Claudio, like, I have been so surprised by how solid the rollbacks for SQL Server have been. I've had to do it in production against what's it called, a cluster. And every single time, because, IA will say, oh yeah, I disabled McAfee, and then they actually didn't. So my patch completely bombs out. And every single time so far that I've had to uninstall it, it has worked. It's just been really, really beautiful. So here we have, the first one is installed. Now it does its best. The system did tell it here that there's another one to uninstall, but if you're familiar with SQL Server, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, but we're just familiar with SQL Server, they have like 57 different things in the uninstaller, like, the browser, the whatever. And so anyway, just say yes or no. And it did its thing, and it's beautiful. All right, so now, if you need, I really like this. I added a dash all needed, and I don't think that I'm going to execute this because I have 5 minutes left and I have some other things. But if you need, super easy, right? You can just say install all of the needed patches and then put it to outgrid view and like watch it happen. So you don't have to do the get KB and like pipe things in. It'll go and it'll get this information for you. Next up, this was the command that I executed that uninstalled everything, right? So I got all the installed software, and then I removed all those Defender things, and then I put it to outgrid view, and then I just uninstalled every single thing. But in this case, I'm just going to install one thing, which is going to be super fast. It is 7-zip. So that's pretty quick. All right. So if you aren't familiar with outgrid view, it's awesome. So let's do 7-zip. Boom. Right. So if you do pass through, it'll give you this little OK button. Now it's going to send it off to the installer. Boom. All right. So easy to remotely uninstall some software now. All right. And I also use PS Framework in the back, and Claudio Silva. He actually added a bunch of PS session configurations to the dbatools module. So I just copied those. And these are all the things that we have. So I have get kbupdate. So this sets your app source. By default, it's going to be database and web. Then PS remoting, which is Claudio's additions to another thing that I just like grabbed, right? So you could change the port, use SSL, include port in SPN, etc. You could do all that. You could even disable remoting if you want sessions, and then it just doesn't use sessions. Here's where we can set that value. What's really, really cool about kbupdate is that if it doesn't detect an internet connection, it will actually automatically set your database, your source to database for that session. So it won't even try to reach out to the internet and like bog you down and annoy you. So, and then, if you want to, you could just, if you're a PowerShell developer that's here, just PS Framework is freaking awesome. So I just reset it. And now whenever I look, so before I'd set it to database, now we went, and now it's back to web and database. All right, so WSUS, actually literally set up a WSUS server for this. This is server 01, so it connected. I keep pressing the wrong thing. I'm so sorry. And we're going to, and I only install PowerShell in there. so it just goes and it gets it, right? So these are all the things that are available on that, but I actually didn't even download them. So there's no link available. And then I'm going to disconnect so that I can set it back to web and database. Now we're disconnected. And another thing, as a PowerShell developer, check this out. You see this get AD computer filter? This is going to return all of the AD machines. And this is some sort of like class that you could do is localhost. It's part of PS Framework. It's classes, and it's really cool. So explore that. And drum roll, here we go with 1 minute left. This is how you would patch your online servers using WSUS. So you go, you get the latest updates, right? So you would do get KB update since, you do add days minus 30. Right? And then it will grab everything from the last 30 days. You could filter it out. If you just want Win10, you can filter it out by every single one of these things. You could do it by, like, I don't know, the uninstall notes. You don't have to even worry about superseded by. It'll figure out all of that for you. So you take that and then you pass it through. You save it to temp, burn to DVD. Next up after that, you want to save your scan file, which we did before. You're going to burn that to DVD. And then once you're on that disconnected network, if you have the AD module, then you could just do get AD computer filter, set your search base. So that'll populate all of your computer names. You say all needed, true, and then you give it that scan file path, and then you give it that repository path, and you install KB update with these parameters, and boom, come back in however long it takes, and all of your computers will be patched just like that. Boom. Boom. I'm a pickle. Thank you for attending my session. I hope that you enjoy this module. It's so much fun to do and work on, and I could see myself using it in a variety of places in the future. Whenever I move to Glasgow, what up? I am a pickle. All right. Everybody, you're free to come and ask Q&A if you have any questions. This is the first time that I'm doing this presentation and the first time presenting as a pickle. So if I could get some feedback on if you're missing anything, if it was too fast or slow or anything like that, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. I've been looking forward to this and I'm super pumped. Next, I'm going to be watching Beardy talk about dev containers. I love all of his and Jess's work with that. More pickle. I will do more pickles all the time. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Chase. Awesome. I'm glad that y'all are enjoying this. Woo! I love it. Thank you for the feedback. I love it. I love it. This was so much fun to do and so much fun to make work. I saw it in my head, like just months ago, and I wanted to bring it all together, and I just like kind of let it I don't know, settle in my brain, and then it just all came out. And this command is one of my dreams, and just because it's so PowerShell-y and so powerful. Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Beardy and Constantine and Shane and Chris. Thank you, everybody, for attending. My name is Chrissy, and I'm a pickle.
You should be able to speak now, Joseph, if you want to, and Chrissy will be able to hear you.
Hi, Chrissy.
Hello.
So I saw a blog post of a universal dashboard for KB update. And
that is currently theoretical.
Theoretical? Okay.
So I'm right now with PowerShell Universal, I don't really know it yet. And KB Update is going to be the project basically that I use to learn PowerShell Universal. But I could see, wouldn't it be so awesome with the front, like just it's so lightweight too. But yes, it doesn't exist. I do expect it to exist in the future and be beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you so much, Anders, and Bruno, and Patrick, and Wolfgang.
Hey, Chrissy, so you said that you are using a different source to get your patches. Are you using something like WSUS offline to pull those down?
No, DISA, so I work with the DoD, DISA government. Basically, the Defense Information Systems Agency, they determine patches that are safe for our systems, and then they have their own repository. And then we go and we used to like click and click and click and click and click. And like people would have to set aside a whole entire day just to click from their systems to download everything. So now I have PowerShell that, but it is ultimately a government system that works. It doesn't work like Windows Update, right? It works more like the Windows Update catalog where you go and you get a KB and then you download it. So that is our source. It's very 90s as well.